War Eagle, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Bleav in Everything Auburn. Taylor Davis and Jason Campbell here to break down everything Auburn football because week one is in the books. Jason and I were both in attendance, so we're going to recap everything that happened in the first showing of the Harsin era and obviously preview what's to come in week two. But first, got to give a shout out to our sponsor, Bet Online. It's that time of year again, and all eyes are now turning to football as teams are back on the gridiron to start the football season. And as always, Bet Online is your number one spot for all the pro and college football action this season. Get all the updated odds, props, and contests, including online's biggest $500,000 NFL mega contest. You can head to the website or use your mobile device to sign up today and receive a 100% welcome bonus. Take advantage of their opening day super promo. Make a bet on the Thursday, September 9th season opener between the Super Bowl champion Buccaneers and the Dallas Cowboys. And if you lose, your wager will be refunded up to $25 for new customers only when signing up and using our promo code NFL100. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your favorite sports. BetOnline, your online sportsbook experts. And also,
a whole lot of betting this week.
Jay, I got another ad to read, fam.
Oh, my bad.
Interrupting my flow. All right, our other sponsor, Balance 7. We have talked about this a few times on the show, but apparently former NBA player Lamar Odom may be returning to professional basketball in Spain soon. Also, as we all know, this is somebody who has had substantial health issues, a life-threatening issue, actually, and he credits Balance 7 to helping him get back to tip-top shape so he could play basketball again. It's a pH-balancing alkaline supplement drink. It's like vitamins or supplements, but in liquid form. You can see how Balance 7 has helped a lot of people, and right now, if you go to balance7.com and use the promo code Bleav, you'll get $10 off their 32-ounce bottle. The bottle lasts 11 days, which is the perfect amount of time to feel the pH balancing drink go to work and then decide if you want to continue. So again, that's balance7.com and use the code Bleav, B-L-E-A-V, at checkout. All right, Jay, now you can go.
What up, world? This your boy, J Cam, just checking in. Hey, everybody, I got a chance to see Taylor Davis in person last week. Can y'all believe it that we've been doing this show
It happened
2 years, and I finally got a chance to see her at an Auburn game because she's always covering away from Auburn. So
that's true.
And guess what? There was fans in the stands. So she got a chance to come back and see the jumbo scoreboard and actually see the intro. The intro was cool. The one that Reed did, it was pretty cool. So one day I might
Agreed.
get on
Jay, you should. What the heck?
Yeah, one day. I'm just putting it out there for Auburn.
Okay.
Just so you know.
It'll happen.
Guess me why I'm looking young. Why I'm looking young, please.
Let's go ahead and make that happen soon.
Right, why I'm looking young.
Yeah. No, oh my gosh. Even when I was a student, the intro, the hype video, even the hype video for the band, I like want to run through a brick wall when I see that video. And the eagle goes without saying, and then the run out, all of that, the pregame hype is always my favorite. And getting to be down there this week, especially, it was a whiteout, which I'd completely forgotten they were doing until I was there. And, the return of a full capacity Jordan Hare and all of these students being back. And it was just electric. And so I was super glad to have been a part of it. I always love, though, the hype video going into the fourth quarter.
Oh, yeah. The one that Takeo does
Takeo.
Now. Yeah.
He
does a really good job with that one.
And we got to see the new light system. We didn't even talk about that.
Yes, the $5 million light system, LEDs, or was it probably been more than that? But hey, they got a chance to flicker in and out. And you also saw the first eagle fly this time. This was a new eagle that flew Saturday night.
Oh, I know that.
Why it took so long.
Interesting. Well, I know that the one that's retiring this season, that last flight is happening in November. So I wasn't sure who was flying in this one. But yeah, the lights got displayed, and going into the fourth quarter when they did the Takeo hype video, they had
Yeah.
the lights going and they're orange and blue and flashing. And I loved them. Like, I remember when we talked about them installing it, and I was like, should that really be our focus right now? But then I experienced them and I was like, oh my God, those are awesome. So I kind of get it
Especially in a
now.
big ball game. You can't wait to Georgia. No, that's probably a
Oh,
CBS game, so it probably won't be dark yet. But Halloween game would be pretty fun when we play Ole
ooh,
Miss at home
yeah.
the day before Halloween.
Which, goodness gracious, Ole Miss had quite a week one, even without their head coach, Lane Kiffin. We're going to talk around the SEC as well, but we're going to start out talking about our Tigers, who did get a win in week one, which, regardless of your opponent, that's the way that you want to start out the season. And they did it big, 60-10, the first win of the Harsin era. And you know, I've seen so much since week one's results just about how, you know, how much stake can you really put in a situation like that, because there is such a level, good gracious, I could even see it on the sideline side. I mean, like, your eyes can just see the difference between a school like Akron and a school like Auburn. It's very evident. But there were a lot of teams in week one that played, quote, lesser opponents and didn't win by 50 and didn't put up over 600 yards of total offense. So I actually take a lot from this, and it was a great sign to me of how balanced things seemed. Honestly, offensively, obviously run and pass, but even defensively, and what they were, everyone seemed, you could not tell that this was a brand new coaching staff, I think.
No, you're 100% right. When I think about this team and what they accomplished on Saturday, I don't want to take anything away from, away from the opponent. As far as saying Akron came in here, they was already 1-17 in the last 2 years. So my whole thing is I always tell guys, like, when you play a game like this, you're supposed to come out and dominate if that's the type of football
Right.
team you're supposed to be. So don't be surprised by what you come out and do. Like, this is a team you should dominate, and that's what these guys did. They dominated Akron from start to finish. And like you said, the thing I really enjoyed the most was seeing Bo kind of stay in the pocket. You know, you can kind of see him go from, first progression to second progression, third progression.
Yeah.
Even though I said 7 catches by the tight end, you had 3. We meet in the middle at 5. So,
Isn't that crazy?
it was both kind of close. So we both win there.
I
I was
said that was going to happen, Jay. I
yeah,
literally
yeah.
said somehow we're both going to be right.
Yeah, and see, so we both was right. And then, like you said, like, there were teams in week one, like, you really don't know what you're going to get because there's no film, especially when there's new coaches. Like,
Right.
you have old tape with other personnel, but not with their new personnel. And when you look at Oklahoma and the way that they barely pulled one out against Tulane, and
What?
so it just goes to show you, Northern Illinois beating Georgia Tech, like Vanderbilt losing to East Tennessee State. So there was teams out there that lost, and you can tell that coaches took notice of Auburn and what they did this weekend, because it wasn't a lot of turnovers. It wasn't a lot of false penalties, and those are the
Yeah.
things you look for in week one, is to see, okay, how much have the guys been paying attention to details? And it showed that these guys have been paying attention to detail, because there was really no false starts for real. And
No, it
uh,
was clean.
yeah, it was a clean game. So when you think
Mm-hmm.
about it, that means this team is well prepared. Coach Hart's has done a good job, and the AP has taken notice. They ranked Auburn in top 25 today. So,
Mm-hmm.
not where we want to be at. We want to continue to keep climbing the wall, but it's a start. And like I say, these first 2 games are just preparation for what the gauntlet of a schedule that we're going to face in the middle and towards the end.
Exactly. And we knew that going into it. But I think that what was shown in week one probably exceeded expectations. It exceeded mine. I mean, I felt confident about the results of it, but you're absolutely right. No turnovers, 4 for 4 in the red zone, like, just little execution things. I mean, we were scoring on every drive there until like the end of the third quarter when all the starters came out. I mean, there was just a soundness to this football team. And so many times when you're covering a coaching change, a whole new staff, blah, 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 you hear all about the mentality and what it is. And obviously we've driven it into the ground that Auburn's mentality and Harsin's approach to this whole thing is attention to detail. He's a guy, in talking to him last week heading into the game, like he harps on being early for meetings, not on time, early. Little nuances of things
Right.
like that matter to him because he knows that it sometimes, and it's dang sure going to be the case in the SEC games, it's small details, it's minute adjustments that can make the difference in a win and a loss. And so many times you hear those things and it's like, yeah, that's cute and all, but like, we'll see. It was part of this team's DNA. There was an attention to detail. There was a tenacity about what they were doing. Even watching them on the sideline, there was energy and there was hype, and the defense was, I mean, TD Moultrie and Derek Hall were going off, and they were jumping around. They had all this energy, and that's what you are accustomed to seeing with Auburn football. And we got so far away from that. And yes, I understand it's week 1, and we'll see how things go by the time we're at week 6, 7. But it gives you a lot of encouragement that everything we've been hearing in the offseason, it wasn't just fluff. They're actually implementing it.
Well, the thing that I was encouraged about the most was seeing Shedrick Jackson. You know, he had, I think, 6 or 7 catches. He only had 3 catches all of last year. And
crazy.
And he's a senior. So you got to think, like, he broke his own career high in one game.
Yeah.
So these guys know that the ball is going to be passed around. Like, I've gotten an opportunity to hear Bo's comments on him being under the center and how it did for his psyche as far as like seeing the game at a different level besides being in shotgun. And he said it does give you a different perspective, and it gives you a different launch point, in which what we talked about weeks ago is you're not always sitting in shotgun, so the defense know where you're lining up at. So it kind of throws the defense off and keeps them on their heels. But you're able to get under the center and able to see the point of attack in the run game and see the play action pass off of it. So, you know, I think this is a great start. And like you say, like leading into another week that I think we should dominate. You know, I think this is just another opportunity for us to get a step better, because if you look at like a Georgia and Clemson game, like they went head hunters the first week out, and you know, the over and under was like 50 points, and it was only 1 field goal. So, you know, the touchdown come off a pick six. So I like the way that we're easing into these games, because when you have a new coach like Harsin, who's coming away from the Midwest to the Southeastern Conference, you need time to kind of get the guys used to you. Like, here, Mike Bobo, he needs to see Bo Nix in action in a game, like not in practice or scrimmage, but in a game. Like, so he needs to understand like how he reacts to good and bad. And it wasn't much bad to go from in adversity, but that will come in the season and how he reacts. And then you think about, you know, these young players. Like, I'm not, you know, I'm going to ask you which one of the young players you thought was really good out of Jaquez Hunter or Kobe Hudson or Javarius Johnson. Like, which one of the guys that you saw really, really, you know, can take that step up for us offensively? But for me, I just like to see the offensive line. They moved these guys off the ball this week. They gave Bo plenty of time to get to his third progression. So that was a good thing to see, because they're all mostly seniors except for our right guard. So everybody else, Keandre is the only one that's a sophomore, but everybody else is still they're experienced. And this is what we need to see.
100%. I thought the way Bo carried himself in this game, obviously his execution, he was 20 for 22 with 275 yards. He had more touchdowns than incompletions. Let that soak in. Let that soak in.
That's pretty hard to do on air. So, you know, that definitely locked in.
Incredibly impressive. And even when I spoke with him post-game, there was just this confidence, not an arrogance, but a confidence. He seemed very settled. He didn't seem overly high or low on this. His sideline demeanor was a lot better this year. You know, that was something that I really talked about a lot with you. He would, you know, keep to himself a lot last year. At times we would see him bickering with some of his, you know, receivers, and none of that was happening. I was right by it. I was paying attention. He was, you know, walking around high-fiving his linemen. He was communicating with a lot of people. He wasn't off by himself unless he was communicating with Bobo, who was up in the booth. It was just little things. He seemed different. But the true test is going to come week 3. We all know that. I think that this is a fantastic foundation, and it kind of, like he said, for so many of the wide receivers, like they needed an actual game experience. Several of them didn't have it. Several transfers needed to play there with this group. Like, you take a lot of value in that. But week 3, an opponent that is closer to the level of this team and in a hostile environment on the road. Look, that's been the narrative of Bo Nix's career. What he does at home in his this is a guy that Auburn's in his DNA. It's in his blood. So, like, being at Jordan-Hare gives him a level of confidence. And sometimes when he's hit the road, all of that has regressed. And so I think week 3 is going to be the true test, but you feel better about it. I had a lot more nerves heading into Penn State than I do now. This was the most that a team has ever scored in a first game under a new head coach at Auburn, which is incredibly impressive. Like you said, 5 tight end receptions. All of them were to John Samuel Shenker. He had all of them. He was the only one targeted, but not the only one to see the field. They even utilized 2 tight end sets, so it confirmed that Harsin wants to use this too. All right, this is an element of the offense that I think they're going to tap into. But 316 rushing yards, 297 passing yards. That is very close to a balanced offense. Very even, very well executed. And like I said, 20 for 22 for Bo Nix. So let's talk about the rushing game because Tank Bigsby and Sean Shivers, what else is there to say? These two are dynamic, and they run so hard and so physical. It's incredibly impressive to watch. I was very impressed by Jarquez Hunter. He would be my newcomer that impressed me the most week 1. And his size is, I think he's going to get overlooked a lot because he's a smaller dude. Honestly, I think he's going to get overlooked. Yeah, but I think it'll work to his advantage a little bit. But run game wise, if we can keep those guys healthy, this will be, I'll say, top 3 ground games in the conference.
Yeah, we have a chance. Like you said, Tank, what a name. Tank, like
ridiculous.
Like NIL,
he lives up
like,
to the name.
All right, yeah. So, so, hey, like I said, he came out with authority. He came out ready to run the football. You can tell, like, he was ready to get on the field. He was ready to break loose. And this is his first experience of seeing a real Auburn crowd. Last season was his first true freshman year.
Oh, my God, good
and
point.
He didn't get a chance to see, but only like 18,000 people. So this was his first real live experience. And when you think about Shivers came in where he left off at last year. He's a great number 2 punch to the number 1 guy. And he's the guy that keeps Tank centered. I don't know if a lot of people know this, but he's the senior on this team. And he kind of keeps Tank calm in a lot of situations. And
he does.
And to see Jarquez come out there and do what he did, yes, it adds depth to the position. So, knock on wood, hopefully nothing happens to any of our guys before him. But it gives you the confidence like, hey, this guy can come in there and run behind the offensive line. You can barely see him. So when you do see him, he's already on you so fast that it's hard for you to make a tackle on him. So I'm excited about the run game. Like I said, offensive linemen love running the football.
Yeah.
And because they don't have to think too much. They don't have to sit back on their heels and absorb the punch. They get to go and lay the punch. And that's what happens when you're an offensive lineman. When you can get the ground game moving, which is going to add 8th in the box. When you get 8 people in the box, now that's going to open up one-on-one more opportunities to be one-on-one on the outside. But these guys will go up and make big plays. And I think that's why Mike Bobo wanted to make sure that they kind of move the ball around to a lot of these different guys this week because he needs their confidence to be at an all-time high when they go into Penn State.
Right.
Let's just face it. We're not overlooking Alabama State, but we have to talk about it. He's trying to get prepared for the big dogs because they're going to be 8 in the box. And they're going to say, okay, can Bo and the young receivers beat us on the outside? And those games are coming. We know it. It's in the schedule. So we have to get these guys confidence early while we can. I expect the ball to be spreaded around a lot this week, just like it did last week.
That was super encouraging to me, the distribution. We even talked about it in the broadcast that he was hitting a lot more targets. And I think we have talked about this on the show 100%, but I think it was almost proven in this. Sometimes a super reliable veteran wide receiver can be the detriment of a quarterback. And hear me out on that because you get tunnel vision on the field a little bit. Not very, some of the elite quarterbacks who understand Tom Brady's going to hit anybody that's out. It doesn't matter how close him and Gronk are and the relationship they've built. Like, he's going to find the best situation. You get that way as a quarterback. But when you're learning your game and your identity as the commander of that offense, if you've got that relationship with that wide receiver and they've proven themselves time and time again in big moment opportunities, it's almost subconsciously who you're looking for on the field. You're not looking for the best thing, you're looking for the best guy. And that can sometimes hinder you. And I think that Bo almost got into that a little bit with Seth. Like they knew that even if they didn't always agree, and sometimes you saw some of those, conversations happening on the sideline, like Seth was that big body target. Seth was scrappy. Like Bo knew he could make something happen. And this year he was back to the drawing board, basically. He was back to, all right, well, I have this crop of wide receivers that like we've got to figure it out together. So I'm going to give them all a chance to show me. He was hitting John Samuel Shaker. We put Tank in the passing game. I love that. Like, let's get him out in space and hit him the ball. Like, there are so many different ways that you can go with this offense. And I think him having all of them kind of on the same level in terms of communication and repertoire and history together, I actually think that's going to benefit this offense in a weird way.
I like what you say about Tank getting involved in the passing game. When I played with Ronnie and Carnell, like that's the one thing that helped their careers, where we got them involved in the passing game, and get them out in an open space, and you throw the flat route and he's able to take a 5-yard catch into a 15, 20-yard game because he's in open space with a linebacker that's trying to tackle these guys. So the more we can get Tank in open space, the more we can get Showers in open space, especially in the screen game. And then as a check down, like I always tell these young quarterbacks, don't look at a check down sometime as a bad thing. If the defense drops off and you get the ball to one of your playmakers in space, like you still can pick up 8 to 10 yards, and it keeps your offense on schedule. You're not 2nd and 10. You're now 2nd and 3, 2nd and 4. So now you can do anything you want to do because you got 3rd and short coming up. So we just got to continue to stay on schedule. I think as long as this offense stays on schedule, I think Mike Bobo can do a good job. My concern is the moment we get off schedule and we're in these 2nd and 10s against really good defenses, how do we respond? Because we don't have the experience where, like you said, Bo used to get away with throwing the ball up to Seth Williams because Seth is going to go up and catch it. But, he hasn't built that core with some of these guys just yet because they're so young. So how does that play in once big games come? Do you have to throw it up? So that's why it's so important for him to go through his progressions and make sure that, okay, if this guy's tied up, I know where my number 2 is. I know where my number 3 is. And if all else fails, do what you've been doing. Run. But just don't run backwards. Just move forward. And I think that's another element that can come into this offense with him scrambling.
That was one thing that I noticed being down there and, gives you just something to keep an eye on. This is not a big group of wide receivers. I was actually like, Javaris Johnson is like a pretty small dude. And I'm not saying truly, and I'm not saying that like it can't be effective. Look across the league, like you'll see it, but you feel like you need to have that one, that's in the back corner of the end zone, that deep threat guy. And but again, maybe the tight end usage kind of helps bridge that gap a little bit. But at least when I was talking to Bo last week, the guys that he was mentioning in terms of who was coming up and who was doing well, I looked down the roster and I was like, okay, these aren't the bigger guys. Like these are actually the more quick, agile. No, those weren't the ones he was mentioning. So that was interesting to me because it's certainly a different way in which he goes about it, hitting a guy that's much, smaller than Seth Williams was. But it's an adjustment, and they'll find that rhythm for sure. But let me ask you a tough question. And people, if Harson heard me ask this, he would probably be pissed. This week,
he's going to hear you because he's going to watch the show.
Coach Harson, I'm sorry. I just got to ask. And look, this probably won't happen, but let me just ask what you would do. Now that you saw what there is to see from Sean Shivers and Jarquez Hunter, honestly, would you play Tank this week?
Oh, yes, no doubt. You got to think, like, if you don't play Tank this week, guess what Tank going to be looking at you like? Dude, are you serious? Like, I got to get my 100 yards. Just because guys think that way, like he's a guy that wants to be 1,000-yard rusher. So
I get it.
When you're going to go against Georgia, let's face it, do you think he gets 100 yards against Georgia? I don't know after watching that defense. When he go up against, Alabama defense, will he get 100 yards? I don't know, because watching the defense. So my thing is when you have these teams like Akron, Alabama State, it's more so than just him getting yards, but getting used to being in open space and making moves because he's going to get to the second level against guys like Alabama State, against Akron, against Georgia State, these teams, like that's where you score your big touchdown. That's where the 60-yard runs
I
come
know.
in and everything, because yes, you're gonna get to those linebackers and everything, but how do you make a move in open space on a safety that's coming downhill at you and you're just one-on-one? All you gotta do is make one guy miss and it's a house call. Like that takes reps. So I would say play him at least the first full quarter and half of the second quarter. And then if the game is out of hand at that point, then you can pull him, because you know you got
Okay.
two capable backs behind him. Because, Sean Shower still didn't get a lot of carries last week.
Mm-hmm.
I know he had the one touchdown run, but he still didn't get a lot of carries. So we still
Right.
need to find a way for him this week to get more carries and to get his groove going. I call these grooving games. It's kind of like you grooving up. It's a well-oiled machine, but you just trying to keep just getting it to where you want to get it to. And all of a sudden that baby's going to ride. It's like a Cadillac on the highway. That's all it is. You just want to be
I
riding
know.
smooth.
And I get it. And I fully anticipate they will. I think I don't envy this situation as a coach with that, because I think they have to know what they have on their hands with Tank. I mean, you feel like you're watching a future great when you watch him play. Like
I used to get mad, Taylor, because they used to take us out of the game when I was
I
playing
know,
in
but
the second
Jay,
quarter.
if he gets injured in a game like this, what like
But
you're
in the
just
first half, if he gets injured in a game is
regardless.
but if he gets injured in a game is 28-14, you can live with
Okay.
that. Now, if he gets injured in a game is 42-7,
Right.
now you're gonna have
It's the whole Tua at Alabama
right.
situation
Now
when
you're
he
gonna have a
played in
whole
that
thing
game.
in.
Right.
Exactly. So
That's the balancing act of it, is just knowing that you kind of have a gift in the fact that both of our first two games are what they are. And we've seen, I think without him, Sean Shivers and Jarquez Hunter are going to be able to get the job done against Alabama State. So I think you're looking at this going, all right, the ground game's going to be okay. If Tank's not playing in Penn State, I think it completely changes how you're looking at the thing. So, and the rest of the schedule is the same way. 2 years ago, Christian McCaffrey, even though the Panthers had a terrible season, Christian McCaffrey hit the 1,000 club, passing and rushing. He was unbelievable. He was just absolutely showing out. The next season, he got injured, and he couldn't not be injured. He would come back for a day because he was feeling good, and he would injure something else. With running backs who are as heavily involved in the offense as Tank Bigsby is going to be for us, it could be a domino effect. And so that's why I think like you have to be very intentional about him. And like, I know this kid would say, don't you dare take me out of the game, because that's his fire. I loved seeing him running toward that first touchdown. He got to like the 10 and started pumping his fist in the air. Like my guy plays with intensity regardless who the opponent is. And I get that. But you also watch him play that hard, and I'm like, watch your hamstring. Like I'm just always so trepidatious, because he does run as hard as he does, and we're going to use him in so many versatile ways that like one tweak and this guy could be out 3 weeks.
Well, the one run that he had in the game, we had like 4 guys on him and he was still trying to run. On those plays, I'm like, Tank, go down. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's no more yards to get. Like, just go down. Like, we don't need 3 guys hanging on you and then one guy come and hit you low and then all of a sudden you're out. So I think he needs to learn like when to go down, when to say, okay, I've gotten as far as I can get. Let me get down so I can get on to the next play. So I think he needs to learn that. And I only reason I say play him early in this game is because he's still running to get in shape. He's still not in game
That's
shape
a great
yet.
point.
And, because we're still so early in this season. So if we can get against Penn State and we need him to carry the ball 25 times,
is
we
he
need
conditioned?
him to be, is he conditioned enough to do that? Because that's when a lot of pull hamstrings come and a lot of different things come. But when your body is not conditioned to do certain things, and then all of a sudden it's on you, and then all of a sudden you're overworking it. So that's the only reason I would say that's a great question. Fans chime in on it. It's like I said, it'd be on IG. So hit us with your thoughts about it. But I just think it's just good to play these guys, at least the first half, just because you're doing it to get yourselves in shape. It's not so much against the opponent, but so much just for self-aware.
Got it. Great point. I'm glad we asked. Okie dokie.
There's no wrong question.
I know I can ask
not
you.
bad.
No, sorry, coach. I want to talk defense with you, but we have one more sponsor to go ahead and tell you about. Our podcast is now partnering with playactionpools.com to bring some interactive fun to the sport we love most. You'll be able to get in on the action with our playactionpools.com football pick'em challenge, which is open to everybody. You can sign up for the contest Bleav Football Pick'em at playactionpools.com and then get your picks in each week. We're going to select the 10 highest profile games of the week between NFL and college, and whoever gets the most picks correct each week will win a pair of electric sunglasses and a pair of DC shoes. So again, go to playactionpools.com and sign up for the contest Bleav, Bleav, Football Pick'em. And if you plan on hosting your own football contests, go to playactionpools.com today. They've got Survivor, Pick'em, as well as a cool sportsbook style concept called Build Your Bankroll. Playactionpools.com, your new home for all your office sports pools.
Electric
let's
glasses.
talk defense.
Wow.
I know, I don't even know what that means, but sounds cool. Yeah. Okay, let's talk defense because these guys were flying around to the football, and it was a lot of fun to watch. They only allowed, they allowed -3 rushing yards. Fantastic. Love to see it. Yeah. And had 6 sacks. Now, I actually give credit to Cato Nelson, Akron's quarterback. They certainly had a hard time, but his completions were actually pretty comparable to Bo's in terms of number. Obviously, yardage and what they were able to convert was substantially different. But considering the pressure that this guy was under and the size difference on the line of scrimmage, I actually thought that this guy had a lot of composure, and I want to give him credit for that. But this defense wasn't allowing them to do much. I wasn't surprised to see that at all. But what were your impressions in this first game in terms of Derek Mason and his imprint on this system?
Well, I tell you what, like these guys, they flying around. That's what I would say. You know, they flew around. They was everywhere you went. There was 4 guys on the ball. And that's what you call team defense. Anytime that you have guys run into the football is what you always hear coaches hollering, you know, get to the football, get to the football. Yeah. It's like, you know, you saw that on the field. And the most impressive thing as well, you saw corners getting involved in the run game, coming up and hitting and sticking guys. Like Roger McCreary, one time the game was out of hand, and I see him on the sideline just itching to want to get back in the game. I'm like, dude, no, chill out, you know. But you know he wants to get out there because he wants to get his hand on the interception, or he wants to create a fumble or something. Like these guys just want to make plays, and you see that. And I'm just like, guys, that time will come, you know. And one time he snuck onto the field. And I could see Coach Mason getting on to him and everything. But that just goes to show these guys, they love what they're doing right now. They're hungry. And they're enjoying it, and they're hungry. And this is a new defense. It's a 34 defense. It's not our traditional 4-3 defense. It's 34 defense. So, you know, you have those guys standing up like Kobe Wooten and Chandler Wooten. I mean, all these guys defensively. But like I said, our 34 defense is all built by the front. And I thought these guys did a great job of tying themselves in there, getting after the quarterback. You know, seeing Tony Fair, it was good to see him. Didn't know he was in his seventh. You can't
miss him.
I didn't know he was in his 7th year in college. So, you know, he's a grown man now, I would say, a grown man out there. Man. So, you know, seeing him out there making plays. And like I said, these guys, like, I just think, like, our linebackers, McLean and Papo, like, we already know what to expect from them. And they was very active, and coach was trying to pull them out of the game. And here they go, wanting to stay in the game. I'm just like, guys, if you don't get your butts out the game, so
it's
you can
a long season.
Be ready. Like, I understand you feel like, oh, that's next hit is not going to hurt anything. But yeah, you know, let's just get you on out. We'll get you back. You never know. Exactly. So I thought, you know, Smoke Monday, we didn't hear a lot about Smoke because he didn't have to get involved that much. You know, the run game of Akron never got to the second level. And he never even got a chance to get threatened passes down the field. So he didn't get a chance to get his hands on any balls or anything. So, you know, overall, I like the way our defense worked. I like the way they ran to the ball. I liked how they didn't have a lot of penalties. You know, it wasn't a lot of PI calls. It wasn't a lot of jumping off sides call. That means it was eyes was watching the ball and not listening to the quarterback, which is what you got to have in big games. Guys got to watch the ball and not try to listen to the quarterback clap or listen to his voice. Just watch the ball on your get off.
Who up front impressed you the most?
Ooh, that's a good question. I would probably have to say Kobe Wooten. And the
Okay.
only reason I say that is because, you know, got hurt early in the game,
Mm-hmm.
decided to come back into the game, where some guys will look at this and say, oh, this is Akron. Like, I'm not really trying to be out here. But no, it goes to show you, like, no, this guy wanted to come and play. And, I respect that because he's one of our leaders on defense. And
Right.
he's the guy that guys actually like pay attention to, they listen to, and he's a big guy. And he's gonna have to be an edge setter. I've said this from the get-go. Like, when you're in a 34 defense, there's a lot more pressure on your two outside guys that are going to be your edge guys. And he's one of
Right.
those stand-up edge guys that got to bring it each and every week.
I had the pleasure of doing an interview with the one and only Derek Brown on the sidelines during the game, and he was quite impressed by that defensive front. Obviously, he left some big shoes to fill, but he said he expects nothing less. The guys that he played with, obviously, he expected them to ball out, and he likes this system and thinks it suits all of them well. But there was a level of intensity. Again, something I say on this podcast a lot. Teams take on the persona of their coach. And I think Harsin has his, but I also think you are going to see the Derek Mason imprint on this defense. And his bread and butter is energy. Every meeting you have with him, every conversation you have with him, it is energized and it is intense and it's passionate. And that's the best kind of defensive ball. And so I think that you're going to see that in how they handle just the game day environment. Yes, it was electric the first game back, but you get into the second half, the crowd's thinned out a good bit. Let's just be honest. I mean, the student section did a great job staying in and staying with us through the end. But the game you win by 50 points. People are heading to Skybar. That's my pet peeve, but they were doing it. But this team was creating the energy for themselves, and a lot of it was on the defensive side. These guys were energized and jumping around, and I think Mason's going to insist on that kind of play and kind of energy, and I saw that already. Obviously, they were excited as heck, but
Coach Mason, he's a bulldog. And the reason I say that, Coach, you don't look like a bulldog. You're a bulldog, Coach. You're solid. So you're solid. And I like his tenaciousness. I like how he get after the guys. And he's up in the booth. But
I know. I wish he was on the sideline.
So people don't really get a chance to see that energetic because he's up in the booth. So, but Zach Etheridge is the guy that's on the sideline. You see Zach kind of getting into the guys and the DBs, and Zach can got a little fire on them. I saw him jump into a couple of guys here and there. So it was good to see Nehemiah Prickett. I thought he played really well.
Yeah.
I thought he, we're going to need that second corner to have big games for us this year. Him and Jalen Simpson.
Agreed.
I think those guys, they have really, really going to get a lot of balls thrown at them because of what Roger McCreary brings to the other side. So I was really proud of what those guys did as well. And like you said, Drayshawn Miller, when will he show back up? He's a guy that's very talented from West Virginia, adds another depth to this defense. And when we get against these teams that like to throw the ball around, especially the Ole Miss game, that ball gets thrown around all over the place.
Oh, yeah.
At least 5 DBs. So when will we see Drayshawn Miller back in action for Auburn? And I know that's a big question everybody wants to know. So hopefully soon. But like I said, I was very impressed with the secondary and a linebacker core and overall just defense. I know Coach Nick Eason. He's from Cincinnati. I know I got a chance to talk to him pregame. Taylor, you were standing there when I was talking to him. And, we was talking about the NFL compared to college. And so he's excited to be back in the college game, and he's excited to help these young men.
I just think it gelled a lot. I've covered a lot of week 1 games that have new staffs, new head coach, new quarterback, what have you. And there's always a grace period that you need and a transition period. And it's usually very evident. To me, this seemed like a program that has gelled already. And there's still more to go. Don't get me wrong. But I was very impressed top to bottom how this ship is being driven. And I am very encouraged about what's to come. I really am. But it'll start with Alabama State happening this week. Still a home game, obviously, before they head to Penn State. But Alabama State is coming off an overtime win this past week, 14-13 over Miles. And obviously last season they had a spring season. They did not play in the fall. They got to the Western SWAC division title, where they ultimately lost to Alabama A&M. They were just one game away from the SWAC championship game, though. So a lot of returners for them. Actually, all 5 offensive linemen have returned. Running back Ezra Gray, who is arguably the best player on their team. They have a very high caliber tight end that I expect them to utilize as well. His name's Terrence Ellis. You keep an eye out for him. And wide receiver Jeremiah Hickson is their primary target. Now, their quarterback Ryan Nettles, he was actually a finalist in the spring for the Jerry Rice Award, which is the top freshman at the FCS level. He was 20 of 30 for 197 yards passing against Miles last week. This is definitely a more mobile quarterback than we saw last week in Cato Nelson. It's funny. Coach Archer, Coach Arth, the head coach at Akron, told us last week, Cato Nelson is a guy that is capable of running and can scramble and kind of make you miss with his legs. But he said his knees are those of a 65-year-old. My guy's been injured a lot. He doesn't have the best knees. And so they tried to they don't want him to run very much. So that's part of their game plan that they keep in mind. This guy, Ryan Nettles, I think he's going to run a lot more. I think you'll see him get out of the pocket a lot more, maybe even throw on the run. It's definitely a difference for our defense to kind of have in terms of what they're prepared for in a quarterback. I think this is a very slow build, but I do think this will be a tougher opponent than Akron. Obviously, we are not anywhere near Penn State, but it will be a step up.
Oh, most definitely it's going to be a step up. I do think Alabama State is better than Akron at this point. Like, Akron is still trying to figure it out. They're now dropped to 1-18 in the last 2 years. So I don't know what much else to say about Akron, but good luck. And the quarterback for Alabama State, he's going to be running a lot. And it's not because he wants to run. It's because the Auburn defense is going to be making him run. So
that's true.
He's going to be running a lot. So, but I just think, people always talk about, hey, man, what's the catch game on the schedule? This one is not the one I think that's a catch game. I think, like I said, we played Alabama State 2 years ago. And they came in, and it was a 7-0 game at the end of the first quarter. So these kids going to come out, and they're going to give Auburn their best shot because, one, they're only 45 minutes down the street. And then number 2 is they get a chance to play on TV a little bit. So they'll be on SEC Network. So they get a chance to be on TV, national televised. So, and they also want to say, hey, I'm playing in front of 80, 90,000 people in the stands. Like, how often do you get a chance to do that in the SWAC, play in front of that many people? So when these kids come in here, it's a different aura to them about coming in here and playing this game. Not that do I think they can win. I think every competitor always think they can win, but I think from a psychological standpoint, I think they look at this like, hey, if we can just see where we measure up against some of the best that play in the SEC, then this is preparing us to try to go out the SWAC championship. This is preparing us in our own league. So let's see where we're at against tougher opponents and everything. So I do think we'll get a lot more fight in them early on, more than Akron, just because, like I said, the closeness of the school. And then just the aspect of just, for Auburn, like, the catch game for me, I just want to see us really come out and focus. It's the Georgia State game, which we'll talk about in 2 weeks. That comes after Penn State, and that's the game before we play, the gauntlet of our schedule. So, let's just get through this game. But I want to make sure the guys are not just looking ahead, because this is the games that you can get sloppy. Is what I mean. Totally. Like, not necessarily losing the game, but you can get sloppy because you're so looking ahead to that big game next weekend. So I want to make sure the guys are just locked in, loaded.
Okay, so for the last game before Penn State, before, intensity in terms of it'll be ABC primetime, it'll be the first road game in a more hostile environment. What do you need to see in week 2? Maybe you didn't see it week 1, or you just want to see more of. What do they need to make sure to execute and fine-tune in this week's game before heading into Happy Valley?
From an offensive standpoint, continue to get more of the tight ends involved. I know Shanker is one. He's one to have 5 catches, but he's a big kid. He's 6'7". Luke Deal, another big tight end. Like, there's 2 tight end sets sometimes that you can neutralize a defense on the road in a hostile environment by going to some of those 2 tight end sets, and you're able to hit some of the balls vertical. You're able to hit some of those guys in the flat that are
Right.
big tight ends and that can keep your offense on schedule, especially when there's crowd noise. I like to also see some of our younger receivers. I like to see Javaris Jackson get more catches than he got this past week. I like to see, I like to see more of Capers. I want to see more of him, see what he's doing. It's just Shedrick Jackson. Can he continue the success off of this week? Can he follow that up with a big week this week? And where is Elijah Cannon? Can we get Elijah Cannon more involved? Because we talked about earlier that, yes, some of our bigger receivers wasn't involved, and that is Elijah Cannon and my man I just talked about. So
Capers.
Capers. So those 2 guys are like 6'4" and 6'5". So those are our big guys. And, so a lot of that for them is they need reps and they need catches in games. So I'm pretty sure they'll find themselves more involved in the rotation this week. And I want to see Demetrius Robertson. What can he do in the special teams department? And also what can he do in our passing game? As well. Like, can we hit him on some deep over routes? Can we get the ball in his hand on a crossing route where he catching the ball and he's a linebacker's chasing him or receivers, DB is chasing him? Like, can we get these guys in open space where he's really good at? And, so I just want to see what we do in open space from a special team standpoint with Demetrius. And like I said, with Javaris Johnson, let's utilize his athletic ability. And we also have another kid named Malcolm Johnson. Like, a lot of people don't know about this kid. He's like number 16, but this kid can flat out fly. Like, he's up there with Swartz, but not right at Swartz level, but he's right next to him on a speed level. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see him out this Saturday and see him go down the field and see the ball go deep. See if he can stretch the field, because you're going to need that. We have got to find a way to get 8 guys out the box when we go against 10. I don't really care too much about what does Akron do? What does Alabama State do? I'm worried about the big games. Like, when we get against these teams, going to put 8 guys in the box and they're going to blitz us, and they're going to say, hey, a lot of their blitzes, not the blitzes just to get to the quarterback. A lot of their run blitzes where they're trying to run blitz you to get certain gaps and make you have to throw the ball. So I want to see, can we utilize and stretch the field just to get those guys to have to, hey, you got to pay attention to this guy now. We can't just leave him one-on-one on an island. So we got to get to that next level.
Speed will also be a prominent difference with different opponents. That was one thing I was noticing with Akron, even speed off the ball at the line of scrimmage. Like, it was just, they were behind like half a second, it seemed like. That will change. Like, I think you can't get too accustomed to these early matchups and the speed of them, because everything gets kicked up a notch once you're in SEC play. So that'll be something I'm looking for. As well as I need to see more from TJ Finley. We saw him a little bit. And
that's a good point.
I think what I saw in week 1 is probably what Harsin and Bobo saw. Some good gracious, the size of the kid. I mean, you and I were standing there looking at him. We're like, my dude could play basketball. He's so tall and lanky. I mean,
Bruce Pearl was on the sideline. Now Bruce Pearl may be able to give him a little elbows. Like, hey,
Bruce
is
like, Bruce is like, wait a minute. So certainly a stature and a body size that you could take advantage of. I mean, God, he can see over all the linebackers, so like, he's fine. But he didn't look ready. I'll be honest. He didn't look ready to me. He looked like he needs those game reps. And of course he does, right? I mean, he hasn't been here very long, even in this system with these this personnel. Like, he needs those reps, because the reality is, as impressed as I was with Bo Nix's performance in week 1, in the game of football, you are one play away from being out. That is just the reality of it. If Bo ends up injured, this kid has to be a little more settled in his role than he was week 1. And the only way you get there is some live reps. So I hope that this is another situation where it's comfortable enough that we can put him in there and let him go, because he needs to kind of find his footing here at Auburn.
Oh, that's a great point. I think that may be the number 1 point, honestly. And the reason I say that is because he is one play away. Yeah, So I say this because it's so hard on a quarterback when the game is over, like, and you have to come in and play, and then so you're playing with backups that out there with you, and then you're going against backups, and things just kind of get disarray, and sometimes you're not on the same page. I would have liked to seen him once the game was like 30-something to 0, get into the game. because at that point you still have a couple of the guys that are starters out there with you, and it can give you a more of a flow of the game. But when you look up and it's 47-0 and coach like, okay, go in the game, in your mindset, you think like, oh, what you gonna do is just run the ball, run the clock out.
And they did a lot.
And so when you come to throw the ball, it's like, okay, we're gonna throw this out right over here, or throw this. And like you said, yes, he looked a little off tilt. And I think a lot of that has to do because mentally, as a quarterback, you know the game is over and you're expecting us to call a run play every play. That's why I say if this game, I would like to see him play more. Say this game is hypothetically 28-0 at halftime. Okay, let's give Bo one drive in the second half, and then, okay, TJ, let's go. Because like you said, we need to get him ready because the unknown. Look at what happened to was it Nebraska or Illinois? Look what happened to Illinois the first game of the season. I mean, so the starting quarterback goes down, and all of a sudden the second guy comes in there, and they didn't really miss a beat because he has experience from playing. So we need to get him in there where there's more live action with some of the starters, some of the receivers that he'll throw to if he have to come and fill in. Because you say it is a new place. It's a new place. It's a new system. And everyone has big expectations for this kid. Like you said, you look at him and his size is like Shaq. You know what I'm saying? Like, so
he's
there's
a big dude.
so automatically there comes big expectations because of your size. And can he throw it? Yeah, the kid can throw it. He got a rocket for an arm. But like I said, I think it's all for him is fundamentals. I really think after studying him and Bo's getting a little bit better fundamentally. That's why he was able to do a lot of things, because his feet was telling him where to go with the ball, because it lined up with the receiver. I think with TJ, that's the next step for him. Can we get TJ's feet in the right place at the right time? And can TJ, buy into it? Because these guys, they all are talented, but they got to understand that the fundamentals is a huge part of the game.
Absolutely. That is very prevalent for him. And I don't know if any of our grad coaches have eligibility. So we need Finley to be the guy.
South Carolina, what are we doing?
What in the world? Speaking of, let's talk about some results across the conference. The only two teams that did not win in week one were Vanderbilt, as we already said, 23-3 against East Tennessee State. They were only able to get a field goal on the board. I apologize, Vandy. And the other team that lost week one was LSU, losing to UCLA in the Rose Bowl. What?
I called UCLA was going to win that game. I said
you did.
Just because, I called it.
We know, Jay. We know. I mean, look, that was I have the LSU game this week. I'm actually heading to Baton Rouge tomorrow. So in prepping for this one, it just feels like all the problems they had last year, nothing's gotten better.
Well, let's just call a spade a spade. Like,
Go ahead.
Joe Brady is in Charlotte.
Joe Burrow's in Cincy.
Joe Burrow's in Cincy. The defensive coordinator is the head coach at Baylor. And let's face it, that's the year they won a national championship. So it doesn't matter how good your head coach is supposed to be. Like, it takes great coordinators that really gets the football team going. And let's face it as well. Coach Ergeron has had a lot to deal with at the quarterback position. His starting quarterback gets hurt 2 weeks before the season starts. Right. So this is a guy that's been taking all the reps. Yes, Johnson comes in. He had some reps last year. He got some games last year. He has some experience. But it's one thing to go with your starter up to 2 weeks before the season. All of a sudden, okay, now he's out of there. We flip him. Johnson, you're back in. And Johnson's a lefty. So that's totally different. Receivers seeing the ball come out different. So we'll see what LSU does. Like, I just think that they had too much going on last week with Hurricane Ida. That's why I picked UCLA, because it's a 16-hour bus ride to Houston. Then you fly out to LA. It's just too much going on. And that's the reason I picked UCLA. So I think LSU will get back on the charts, but week one was a wash. But I think this was a game that it just wasn't for them.
I know. But also, why the heck were they ranked 13 heading into week one?
Because of recruiting. Like, you got to think, anytime they're top 8 in recruiting every year. Think about it. Georgia's top 3 every year. Alabama's top 3 every year. And recruiting. So they just expect those guys to reload because that's what they think.
Yeah, but they had great recruiting last year. And look at they were 5-5 last year. And they are now 5-6 since winning the national championship in 2019. Who does that sound like, Jake?
I don't want to talk about that. I don't
We
want to talk
did.
about that.
Look, I think that sometimes generational players come around and you just strike gold. And I think Coach O struck gold in 2019 with Joe Burrow and all the pieces he had around him and an offensive line mind like Joe Brady. And it was the magic season to match the magic that was on the roster. I don't think it was sustained.
But I say this, though. Coach Les Miles was down there, and he averaged 10 wins a year at LSU. So that's where they think this reloading thing come in, because every year they reloaded. The only thing that hurt Les Miles was he didn't want to adapt his offense. That's the difference between him and Nick Saban. Nick Saban went out and got coordinators to come in and do something differently than what he's done in the past from an offensive standpoint, and that's why they was able to excel. Coach Les Miles stayed stubborn. He wanted to continue to eat grass and continue to get the same kind of offense on the field each and every week, and without anything changing. So that's what separates. Look at Kirby Smart. Kirby Smart is trying to do things like Saban at UGA.
Mm-hmm.
Except for his offense still doesn't look. He hasn't even adapted to getting an offense anywhere close to what Saban does from an offensive standpoint. So that's how you adapt. That's why I say I like where Auburn is going from the standpoint of all the different things we're doing on offense. It's all new. It's and defensively, it's new. So sometimes newness is good. And so I just feel like, we'll continue to build and see where we end up at.
Well, and honestly, I think that's going to be the storyline if things don't drastically change. Like, how many chances does Coach O get? I mean, I don't know. When you've got Tyrann Mathieu going to Twitter talking about how disappointed he is as an alum, that fundamentals and how poor they were tackling. Jason, this is almost always one of the most physical defenses in the country. It doesn't matter what their record is. They can suck in wins and losses. Their defense is lights out ball. They were straight up missing crossing routes, just like completely missing. And fundamentally it was bad. And when you've got alum that are literally publicly going to their social media accounts talking about how disappointing it is to watch, that like it's on the coaches.
Well, if he doesn't win more than 9 games, he won't be there.
I don't think so either.
Because LSU fans do not play. They don't care. Just like they care about their gumbo, they care about their boudin, they care about everything else. And I tell you, when it comes to their football, they do not play about their school when it comes to football, because they get talent. So that's no excuse. You have talent.
Right. What's the problem?
So, and it's on.
They had 2 out, a running back and either a linebacker or safety, that didn't play week 1 because of academic issues. Right. School's been in for 2 weeks. What issues you got? Like, I don't know where things are in terms of, they also have Jake Peetz as the OC now and a new DC. His name is slipping my mind. Both of those got hired in January. They have NFL backgrounds, but I don't know, man. It doesn't look, I'll be interested to see how things are when I get down there. And I 100% give credit and understanding and grace to what they just went through, what the state went through. A lot of them probably have family members that they're, thinking about right now. And that weighs on you 100%. But I'm looking at the coaches, just like Tyrann Mathieu said, like, how are you running this program? How are things kind of falling together right now? And this week they're going to need to, get it together and present a more united front, because everybody's pretty down on them right now. Also, an interesting storyline for them this week. Coach O's son is the starting quarterback that they're going to be facing. So it's a family affair. McNeese State.
McNeese State. Wow. How ironic. I tell you this.
Isn't that crazy?
Taylor, I tell you this. I think the fans are upset because let's think about it. Hurricane Katrina happened. The Saints came out and played the Falcons, and it was one of the craziest games. Like, the Saints had so much energy. Okay. 2011, 20 years ago on 9/11, what happened up in New York? That was sad. We played Syracuse the next week. there was no way possible we could win that game. Syracuse was on a whole nother level. All the first responders there, all the firemen there and policemen there, and the governor speaking and tears coming down people's eyes. Like, they had so much in them. The White Freeney had a heyday. You know, he had like 5 sacks. You know, I still feel them. So it's just like they fed off of that. So people was expecting. Look at Tulane. That's the only reason I can't get Coach.
Jason.
That's the only reason I can't get Coach O such a pass. Look at Tulane. Tulane went to Oklahoma driving to win the game. And these kids was fighting hard. Why? Because they said they have family back at home with no power, no food. People can't even get anywhere because of what's going on. So they wanted to give them something to smile about. And they almost knocked off the number 3 or number 4 ranked team in their place. So what's the excuse? LSU's on the road. You have more resources than Tulane. So I can't give them a pass because all these other teams use something that happened at home that was horrific and use it and put it on their back, and it made them play with more passion and energy. And I didn't see that from LSU.
That is a fantastic point. I try and just, give grace, but you make a great point. And look, Coach O trash talking with a fan heading into the game doesn't help either. Like stuff like that, the sissy blue jersey, like, come on, man. Like you're representing it, stuff like that. You're just like, you're giving people ammo, honestly. And it wasn't the week. And I don't know. I think this program is in a tipping point one way or the other. They're either going to have to completely change what they're doing in terms of who's running that and who's playing everything, or this season needs to become a miraculous one that just started out with a loss. I'm not sure, but those are the 2 options at this point. But otherwise, everyone in the conference won. I think as much as we wish it wasn't the case, Alabama looks like they look like they could win a championship right now. Given the way everyone else looked week 1, they are light years ahead.
Well, I just say this. Miami defense, sorry, Tavares Robinson, played with us at Auburn.
I know.
Miami defense is nowhere close to Georgia defense, nowhere close to Auburn's defense. So I think Auburn has a chance against them in our backyard. And I think Georgia has a chance against them because if they play defense the way they played defense against Clemson the other night, they can win that game. And I understand, yes, they look like a machine that just keeps going and keeps going and keeps going. But I will say I like where our defense and Georgia's defense, I think, has the opportunity to defeat them this year. The thing in Alabama just lost a linebacker that was all SEC last year out for the season. I hate to see that. I hate to see injuries early on in the season. I like to have all guys playing, but I just think, are they the team to beat in the SEC right now? It's between them and Georgia. I would have to say Alabama just because offensively, I still think they are ahead of Georgia. Yeah, they can put points on you. Georgia has to rely on shutting down teams by smothering them with their defense.
Right.
So that's the difference in that aspect. Auburn, will Auburn defense be at top 5 at the end of this year? We'll be top 3 in the SEC at the end of the year. Will we be standing with those 2 teams from a defensive standpoint? I would have to say yes, just because of the simple fact our back end and our linebacker core. And I like that we have Kobe Wooten. I like that we have, Caleb Johnson and Derek Hall and these guys. I think these guys, the more experienced, and Nick Eason being their D-line coach, I think he will have them prepared. My concern will be when teams face us with their defense, when Georgia and Bama face us with their defense, and they got 8 in the box, are we experienced enough at the time we play them to be able to score points to outscore them a little bit? Because I think the games will stay within the 20s. I don't think you get into the 30s and 40s against these defenses. But will we have enough?
And Alabama will face Florida in a couple weeks. And I actually was so impressed by their backup quarterback, Anthony Richardson. I mean, Emory Jones, he has waited. I love his story. He has waited his turn. He's been behind Kyle Trask. Now he gets a shot. And they have this phenom freshman and Anthony Rich who comes in and makes a highlight tape hurdling people. But that'll be an interesting one. I think you got to kind of see Bama in environments like that to get a real gauge on it. But just in terms of, how structured they are, how disciplined they are, and what they were able to show in week 1. They looked more like a week 5, week 6 team than a week 1. So whatever. Okay, real quickly, other scores. Tennessee won over Bowling Green. Kentucky won over UL Monroe. Kentucky actually looked pretty good. I'm kind of keeping my eyes on them.
Kentucky looked okay.
Yeah.
Tennessee, quarterback can throw it like a rocket.
Yep. Love to see it. Arkansas defeated Rice. Look, Arkansas had a better season last year than a lot of people anticipated, so we'll see what Pittman continues to put together there. Mississippi State got in by barely.
My poor brother, he went to Mississippi State. He was still about to pull his hair out. He's just like, he said, I don't know if Coach Leach is serious or not serious because
I don't know, dude. I mean, every time he does an interview, it's something like that.
I was just like, gosh, I know. Like, man. But anyways, moving on.
35-34 over Louisiana Tech because Louisiana Tech missed field goal there at the end, or they would have lost. Missouri beat Central Michigan. South Carolina beat Eastern Illinois, a shutout, 46-0. Georgia took down Clemson, 10-3. Wild. Florida beat FAU. Texas A&M beat Kent State. I already talked about Vandy and LSU. And Ole Miss beat Louisville, 43-24, even without old Kiffin, who was unfortunately at home with COVID-19. So
they defense
interesting
looked a lot
across
better.
the board. They did. And look, I've always thought Matt Corral was a great quarterback for them. He loves to air it out. And I think the pairing of him with Lane Kiffin was the best thing for his game.
Yeah, I think Ole Miss, from an offensive standpoint, they scare you because they can put up points. Like, you got to think, they put up 50 on Alabama last year. Mm-hmm. So we get them on a Halloween game, and like, we understand that they're going to score. But I think we can get after them a little bit. But my whole thing is their defense has always been their Achilles heel. And those guys, they actually played better the other night from a defensive standpoint. Now, if that continues to happen, Ole Miss could be a little bit challenging of an opponent than a lot of people gave them credit for before the season started. So right now, I'm thinking the West is coming down between the big three. I still think LSU is out of it unless they show me something. It's going to come down between Alabama, Auburn, Texas A&M in the SEC West.
Pretty sure I said that. But anyway, we won't go back to that argument. It's fine. But what I love to see in week 1, because, normally we have to wait till postseason for this to happen. We had 3 ACC, SEC matchups in week 1. Yeah, and SEC won them all.
Handily.
Love to see it.
Except for the Georgia game. It wasn't handily, but the Louisville and Ole Miss game was handily.
And Alabama, Miami.
Was handily.
So. Love to see it. Sorry, ACC. But that is going to do it for us this week. We will patiently wait and see how week 2 goes. And hopefully our Tigers can put another impressive showing together before they head to Happy Valley, which is the game that we will preview on our episode next week. Obviously, will be an exciting one. Golly, I'm already nervous for that one, but it'll be a lot of fun. I'm excited to preview that one with you next week, and we'll recap all the action from this week as well. So make sure you join us. We are going to try and start putting the video portions out on YouTube. So if you're a visual person and you prefer to watch us run our mouths, we'll have those options for you as well. Or you can continue to listen to us as a podcast the way you always do in Spotify podcast app, on Bleav's website, however you prefer to take in our show. We'll continue to give you those options. So make sure you stick with us. With us. Subscribe if you haven't already. Leave a review, and we'll continue to crank these out as season continues. So thank you, as always, for listening. Jason and I greatly appreciate it. Enjoy the game this week. War Eagle.
Peace. War Eagle.